It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their nonlinear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on the path to success. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which the link will be in the show notes. Today, my guest is Daryn Reiner. Daryn's journey began overseas, spending her early years in Southeast Asia before settling in Western Washington. An avid equestrian, she trained her own racehorse to win in hunter-jumper competitions. Following high school, she surprised her mother by enlisting in the Navy, where she served as a nuclear engineer for 6 years. However, it was her experience responding to the 2005 tsunami in Banda Aceh that ignited her passion for mental health work. Witnessing the resilience and strength of people amidst the devastation, especially the children, left an indelible mark on her heart. After her Navy service, Daryn engaged in humanitarian work in Zimbabwe before immersing herself in the mental health field. She pursued a bachelor's degree in cultural anthropology at Seattle University, where she was involved in establishing and managing a therapeutic day school for students with reactive attachment disorder, debilitating anxiety and OCD, and autism spectrum disorder. Her graduate work focused on counseling psychology with an emphasis on experiential therapy. Throughout her career, Daryn has worked closely with preteens, adolescents, and young adults in residential and wilderness settings. She has held positions ranging from mentor and residential staff to program executive leadership. She worked as an educational consultant for about 8 years too, and has been in leadership as a director of admissions for 8 years leading up to her arrival where she is now, which is Uinta Academy. As a mother herself, including a special needs child, she fully comprehends the challenges and trust involved in having a child in residential treatment. And that is why Daryn's story isn't just personal or isn't just professional. She's really living it and working it day in and day out. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Daryn. Daryn, thanks for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited that we're actually sitting down and doing this interview in person.
Yeah, this is so great.
It's been in the works or in the making for a really long time, so I'm excited. I don't know your full story. I feel like you and I have known each other for years, in the work setting, but I don't know a lot of your personal upbringing. So I'm curious. I mean, I know your mom, but I'm super curious to kind of hear a little bit. So why don't you actually fill in our listeners for anybody that is not familiar with your story? Where did you actually grow up? And then what was the messaging that you were getting kind of about what you're supposed to do after high school from kind of your family and the community in which you were raised?
Yeah, that's a great question. My path was definitely not linear. I grew up with very, very creative parents. And I grew up overseas, mostly in Southeast Asia, with some stints to, boarding school in England for a little bit when I was a kid because I love the Madeline stories. And my dad was like, cool, let's go find a school all covered in vines. And, we saw the Black Stallion, and it was and then we're walking down the street in London and walked past I think a travel agency that had a picture of someone riding a horse on the beach, and we're like, let's go there, and then spent 6 months in Tunisia riding horses on the beach until finally And my parents were not together at the time. And then, finally my mom was like, okay, let's rein it in. She's had all these interesting life experiences, but she also like hasn't had any normal experiences and is getting kind of socially weird. Like she has no idea how to have like peers. And because she's never had peers before. And so she kind of pulled me back to the States. And then I had a very, lovely, like suburban, upbringing with horses, and then later got really into diving, like springboard tower diving, which is really where my kind of launch into what would become my adult life really kind of started, because I got really into it and it just became like my entire existence. And every cell in my body was focused on how, like, getting to the 2000 Olympics. And it was...
Daryn, I did not know this story at all. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. Like, this is awesome.
It was everything I live for. And the kind of culture in our family, I mean, my parents were both so outside the box, they'd never heard that the box existed. And then I was like the one, I was 5 years old, and they would like have me hold on to the paper plane tickets. And not because it'd be cute to give me that job, but because like I was the most reliable one to hold on to the plane tickets. And so I was the linear thinker. I was the organized one in the family. And, the kinds of parent-child conversations that my parents had with me were very loving and supportive, but not gentle. So, the kinds of conversations we would have were things like, my dad giving me Muhammad Ali's speech about going just one more round. Like, when you don't think you can do it, you go one more round. My mom's favorite line to me was, there's no excuses among successful people. And I'm like, I have the flu and I'm throwing up. There's no excuses among successful people. And I think I also saw, I saw people like that out. I remember one of the most impactful lines, kind of single thing someone said to me was my boyfriend's dad. And I was like 16. I was helping them build a barn. And, I had no idea what I was doing. And he had given me, I have zero skill in that area. And he had given me this job. The dad had given me this job to do. And so I went off on my own to try to figure this out. And I'm like, I have no idea even where to start. And so I'm kind of fussing with it, struggling with it, and then ultimately didn't do it. And he's like, all right, well, where are you at with that? And I'm like, well, I tried. And he's like, there's no try in real life. You either got the job done or you didn't. And it was kind of harsh, but it also it shifted my thinking in this, you don't stop at, I tried. You find those resources, you ask people, you figure it out. Yeah. And, and I was smart enough, and I was athletic enough, and I was, efficacious enough that, as a kid, that when I put my mind to stuff, I was used to being able to be successful. So come kind of, the kind of year before the 2000 Olympics, and I missed the Olympic trials by half a point, and which was crushing. But the real crush was this recognition that I was never going to be good enough. I didn't have the talent. I was never going to be good enough. Could I maybe have made the trials, in another 4 years? Maybe. But I was absolutely never going to be good enough to go to the Olympics. And, and I really had to find a new identity. And I could have had a brilliant college career in it. But I just couldn't, it was such a downgrade of the dream in my head, and I didn't know how to wrap my mind around that. And so I gave up. And so I had some scholarships for it, didn't follow those, and didn't tell my parents, and decided to enlist in the Navy instead. And so part of this trade-off for being so focused on diving is that it's I was, training 6 hours a day in the off season, 8 hours a day in season. I didn't have social time. I didn't have no friends, but didn't have a social life. That was what I did. And, and I was so attracted to just like the brotherhood part of it. Yeah. So I enlisted in the Navy, and to my parents' my dad thought it was funny. He was like, other kids rebel by by doing drugs, and like you rebel by joining the military. Like you're such a tool. And I'm like, you could find a right angle yourself, Dad. Like, come on. And my mom was just, she had worked so hard her entire life to really create like white collar opportunities for me that she didn't have herself. She didn't have the kind of family support that I had and things like that. And so she just didn't understand. She's like, why? And I told them after I had done it. Mm-hmm. So I went and enlisted joined the Navy. And then they ended up, they sent me to college, but then, 9/11 happened. And when we went to war, I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't know we were going to be there for 25 years. And so I dropped my scholarship and went back to the fleet, and then finished out my contract in the fleet and spent pretty much the entire rest of that contract in the Persian Gulf. And I was a nuclear mechanical engineer. So getting out, and the Navy it really let me see who I was in a way more complete way. And so, in my family, I was like the linear thinker, and that's who I was. I was like the not creative one. And then once I got around, once I got all the structure that I had ever wanted, in the military, and was around, all these other people, it made me realize like I can be that, but I'm also all of these other, I'm actually this whole complete person. I actually am really pretty creative. Mm-hmm. I can be all these other things too. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the best gift the military gave me, was actually letting me find all these other parts of me. And getting out, the job in the civilian world, the job in the military is very hands-on. The job in the civilian world is really like Homer Simpson's job, where you're like sitting in a room by yourself, just surrounded by little lights. And, that's really the job. And that held very little interest to me. And so my husband, then boyfriend, and I, after I got out, we ended up going and living in Zimbabwe for a couple of years, and just traveling around and buying art. And this was kind of at the height of Mugabe doing kind of his evil dictator thing. And there was, every sanction available was on the country, and, there's no petrol, no food in country. And, so we kind of navigate that and figured that out. And when I was coming back, my mom does work in this industry, and I was living, I kind of grown up with, in her child and adolescent psychiatry practice. And so I was definitely, had a lot of just familiarity with this mental health world. And she's always been a good teacher, and I've always been someone that asked a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. And so she'd been bugging me about, kind of joining, coming in, like joining the practice. And ultimately, there were a lot of factors going into that, but ultimately decided to do that based on things that I knew that I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what components I wanted. I wanted things like the ability to see a hole and step into that hole and fill it. Having direct access to the person that writes the checks, being able to help people, and this work provided all of those opportunities. So that's all right. I'll give it a chance. And so came back, went back to school, and was doing, a lot. I was, working full time. I was rowing crew at Seattle University, which was such a interesting experience. It was D1 rowing, but it was it felt so easy. I wasn't fighting my body type for the first time, ever in sport. I was actually built for it. And my whole existence didn't ride on whether I won or not. My whole self-worth didn't ride on whether I performed at my very best that day. And it's such a beautiful team sport. And one of the things that I've really carried with me into the rest of my career is there's this idea or this thing in rowing of seat racing. And so unlike other sports where you try out, you get the position, you at least have the position for the year, in crew, that's not your seat in the boat is never secure. So anyone at any time, the freshman can challenge the senior, for their seat in the boat. And then you race, you flip-flop seats and you race for that seat. And whoever the boat runs faster with wins that seat. And it creates this mindset of you need to be earning your seat every day. Mm-hmm. And you want those people coming up behind you on the team to be able to challenge you for your seat. You want to still win the seat race, mm-hmm. but you want them to be able to challenge you because you do want them to be able to take your seat when you're gone. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a threat. It's really this opportunity to earn your seat every day. And if they can take it from you, then you don't deserve it anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's really a concept that I think about a lot when I'm training and supporting, people that I work with and people that that report to me. How do you grow someone? I want to grow people in my organization to be able to take my seat.
I love that. Talk about impressive leadership. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I mean, I don't feel like I hear that very often. I can imagine how empowering that would feel for somebody who is a part of your team.
I hope it's empowering. I don't, impressive or not, I don't know about that. I feel I think anyone in my seat is, I'm showing up the best I can, hoping that I can be worthy of this. I don't know what I can only really describe as a sacred trust. You're responsible for, you're responsible for these people, for people's lives. And we're responsible for the students' lives. Yeah. But I'm responsible for my staff's, for their livelihoods anyways. Yeah. And how I show up for them and with them impacts it influences their relationship with the work. It influences their relationship with any boss they ever have in the future. And it's hard. It's hard to know, it's hard having that influence. And like I said, you're just trying to be working to be worthy of it. Yeah. I don't know that we're ever totally worthy of it, but working to be worthy of it every day.
Well, you've had I obviously have been sitting here just kind of in awe hearing about some of your experiences, a lot of which I had zero clue about. So I'm just wildly mesmerized, kind of thinking about truly some of these worldly experiences, transformative experiences. And it makes me think when I asked the question for you, do you view yourself as successful because of your experience? I just anticipate some of those influences, regardless of your answer, right? There are very few people that I have interviewed that have had even remotely a fraction of the type of experiences that you've had before age 18. So how that also then impacts the question now as somebody who is a mom herself, through this career journey, do you see yourself as successful? Again, I am curious to hear how you answer this question, right? Knowing the experiences that you've had, the influences that you have, the analogy that you've described, or kind of that metaphorical approach as a leader for the organization. Do you see yourself as successful?
I don't know why that's such a hard question to answer. I guess the simple answer is yes. And that, I have been able to, reach my goals. As a parent, I'm mostly able to, be what they need me to be most of the time. And I kind of go back to this, working to be worthy. And, you never, hopefully you never arrive. And I kind of embrace that. And that as long as you're working to be better. One of my favorite quotes is a Vince Lombardi quote, and he said, like, winning isn't everything, but wanting to win is. And, or like to go back to my, my dad's Muhammad Ali speech, like, you just go one more round. And one of my children has, significant medical special needs. And there's any number of days that you're just like, you don't have an option to not be good at that. And, and when showing up for our kids is everything. And I don't get it right every time. And I try to, just heal those breaks when they happen. And there's times I just drop, my oldest started middle school this year. And, and even just like tracking, emails from that many different teachers. Like sometimes I'll miss an email and then I'm just, and I, feel like a colossal piece of crap. And you just, my dad would, when you just crap the bed one day, he'd be like, well, Daryn, somebody's got to be the asshole. You got to just try, every day, somebody's got to be the asshole. Today, that was you. Try not to be the asshole tomorrow. That's all you can do. And so, yeah, I show up, I try to be worthy. And when I'm not, I try not to be the asshole the next day. And I think that's the best I got, that's the best I got. And yeah.
Yep. And tomorrow is another day. So, so today may not be that day, but tomorrow's another day. Yeah. Okay. I feel like we really, unfortunately, did a disservice to the listeners in the sense that I did not give you enough time to share some of the other pieces to your story personally for your journey as a mom, because there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are parents and have some experiences. So this is more of a invitation to reach out to Daryn if you are curious or need support, because maybe the last 2 minutes of, Daryn talking quickly and dropped this little piece about being a parent of a young person that has some pretty significant medical conditions that require additional parenting support. So I think that there's, no story is alike. And yeah, I'm always encouraging anybody that's listening to reach out to the listener, because if for whatever reason a part of their story resonated with you as an audience member, oh my gosh, I just have so many questions, or I'm just I'm so drawn to you. I'd like to connect and learn more and be, just know you. And then obviously, if anybody's listening and they just are a parent that, could use support, Daryn's contact is going to be in the show notes. Reach out. This is my invitation, and don't flood her inbox, but for anybody that really needs it, just reach out. And Daryn, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, I feel apologetic because I didn't give you enough time to give us the space to talk about all the things, but I hope that we're kind of closing out here with that opening for anybody that wants to kind of pick up where we're leaving off that conversation with you, that they can. So thank you again.
Thanks, Joanna. It's good to be here.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email joanna@lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.